Hello, my name is Blessing Christmas, and unfortunately, my partner Crystal Shepherd could not be here today. But together, we came up with ideas to talk about the book Aren't I a Woman? Now, before I get started, I would like to give a little insight about the author, Deborah Gray White. Miss White is a women's studies professor and specializes in African American and American women's studies. Other than her famous work, Aren't I a Woman? Miss White is also responsible for three other publications called Telling Histories, Too Heavy a Load, and Let My People Go. The most underappreciated and disrespected group of individuals today is the African American woman. Although anything that a man did, a woman was still able to do, the woman had it more bad than the man. The man had to, go on the fields, do work, and they were punished. Same thing went for African American women. The only difference was they had to bear children. They had to take care of the children of their slave masters. They were violated by their slave masters. They were raped. They were, sold as circus animals. They were treated as circus animals, all because they were African American women. Imagine being forcefully dragged to move from your country to another country that you know nothing of because you're black. Then imagine being stripped of your dignity and having lost all sense of human rights because you're black. Actually, Jezebel and Mammy weren't actual people. They were mythical beings that the whites used to compare the African American woman during slavery. I'm going to go into depth about Jezebel, and then I'm going to go into depth about Mammy. Now, Jezebel was a very lustful individual. She was even portrayed to be a predator. She was the kind to invite men into her bed, and she was very promiscuous. Now, this is the kind of individual that white men or white slave owners liked to compare the black woman to. When in terms, it was the simple fact that they wanted us in their bed. They wanted to violate, they wanted to rape us, and they did rape us, and then we bore children with them. And even after bearing children with them, our children were sold off into slavery again. Mommy was seeing more of the holier version of Jezebel, the one who kept the plantation running and had the kids and everyone in the house fed. So we are good enough as black women to take care of their kids and breastfeed them, but they are also attracted to us. And because they are attracted to us, they have to come up with a misconception to make it justifiable as to why they want to have sex with us. African American women usually relied on each other. During childbirth, another slave woman will be there to help her out. They usually they usually hung out around each other. Another reason for them to rely on themselves is because even though they were married, their husbands usually left for home and wouldn't even be back for weeks, sometimes even months. And the men themselves, some of them even died without even ever having children because they were never home. I've always been under the impression that all slaves, no matter child, women, men, they were all chained when coming to America, in the boats. But did you know that the women were actually not restrained or chained? And even when they wanted to escape, they had help. And the author, Miss Gray, actually points that out in chapter 2. I give this book a 10 out of 10, and I believe that it is a book that every African American woman today should read. This book really goes into depth about how the female slaves in South America resiliently fought for their motherhood, feminism, love, and freedom despite so many tragedies, bias, myths, and crimes that were implemented against them. Imagine being forcefully dragged to move from your country to another country that you know nothing of because you're black. Then imagine being stripped of your dignity and having lost all sense of human rights because you're black. Now think about this. You are forced to work for someone else, and as a reward, you are either whipped or you are sentenced to death because you're black. That's what it was to be a slave in America. Now take that information and add to that. Imagine being sexually abused. Imagine being used for show. Imagine being touched. Imagine being violated. Imagine having all sense of dignity being stripped away from you. That's exactly what life was like to be an African American woman during slavery. There were actually 5 stages of the African American women during slavery. There was childhood, her teenage years, marriage, childbirth, and old age. But it was said that the most important was her teenage years because those were the years where she was considered the most fresh. Her body was still new, and that was the year in her life where she would most be exploited the most. Has for sure impacted the lives of African American women today, not just only in their mindset but also in their way of life. If you pretty much kind of think about it, some of the ways of black women today, if you look on the internet, you see how they behave compared to how they were treated back then. I feel as though although slavery is no longer here, in some ways, we still have that mindset that we are still slaves, not only to the white man, but also to ourselves. I honestly and strongly believe that this is a book that everyone needs to read, especially black women today in America. If you didn't already know what it was like to be a black woman during slavery, then this is the book for you because it undermines and it tells you exactly what a black woman went through just because of the color of her skin. Sexually abused, exploited, had kids with the black women. The white men had kids with the black women and then sold them off for their own personal gains. It was so bad that the black woman prayed and hoped that she had freedom like a black man. And that goes to show you that a black man during slavery, how they had it bad, they were exploited also. But for a black woman during the same period of time, saying that she prayed and hoped that she had the same, freedom as a black man shows you how tough they had it. They were treated wrongly. You beat the black woman like you would beat a black man, but yet they felt they're downgraded for what they're really worth.
Well, children, where there is so much racket, there must be something out of kilter. I think that twixt the Negroes of the South and the women at the North, all talking about rights, the white man will be in a fix pretty soon. But what's all this here talking about? That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me. And ain't I a